Hi everybody. Today I'm going to give you some tips on pinky vibrato because a viewer mixed flattery in with a question for me and said I have a lovely pinky vibrato and could I please show how I do it. Anytime you mix flattery in, you're going to get a good response from me. Seriously though, pinky vibrato, a couple things, if you can just get over certain prejudices we have against our pinky, that'll help a lot. We think of pinky as small and weak. Pinky is small, but pinky is not weak. And I'm guilty of telling my young students that as well, because it's cute to call him the runt or the weakling. He's not. The pinky has access to the entire heel of the hand. He's got this huge muscle to his or her benefit. And not only that, but the forearm can also help to assist the pinky. Okay, so that overcomes the prejudice that the pinky is weak, because pinky's not weak. The other prejudice that pinky is smaller is true. It's unavoidable, but we can do things to offset that. When we're in grade school and we're in orchestra, the orchestra teacher threatens us with our life to not collapse our wrist. So that backfires and we start playing like this. That totally cripples pinky because it pulls him further away from what you're trying to do and makes pinky even shorter and more disabled from that shortness. So we want to have a straight wrist. And when your wrist is straight on violin, you're going to feel like you're doing this, but you're not. So we need to retool, recalibrate, look in a mirror. Mirrors are one of the most useful practice tools a violinist can use because it gets you outside of your perspective and lets you see yourself from a teacher's perspective. Okay, so try to strive for a straight wrist, not a wrist that's bent out. And this isn't as bad as that. So when in doubt, bring your wrist in. As long as you're not bringing your wrist in order to rest the neck of the violin on the heel of your hand. That's what kids who are just starting out try to do, and that's why teachers threaten them with their life. So you can bring your wrist in slightly. There's nothing wrong with that. There's everything wrong with that. Okay? So again, I'll repeat myself, aim for a straight wrist. There's something else you can do to help offset the shortness of the pinky. A couple things. You can rotate your elbow. By rotating your elbow, watch my knuckles. Rotating my elbow under elevates the pinky higher, which places him at more of an advantage, and it offsets that shortness. Let me show you on the violin. See how rotating the elbow brings you into a more advantageous placement for the pinky. But we don't always want to do that. We don't want to end up with a sore shoulder. So that's one tool to use. Don't stay in that position. Another tool to use is rotating your wrist so that you're not looking at the palm of your hand, but so that you're looking at the heel of your hand. That brings pinky closer to the neck and offsets that shortness. So rotate that wrist. I even draw a smiley face on some students' heels, and I remind them to look at the smiley face. And this is the easiest one to implement, by the way, and probably the most powerful. Look at the line that your knuckles creates. When you're thinking about your pinky, let's help him out and slant those knuckles so that pinky is the highest knuckle. Doesn't have to be to the extreme. Just a little slant is going to lift pinky up remarkably. And that spares you of the extra work and the sore shoulder of thinking about it coming from your elbow rotation or your shoulder. And you just think of it as tilting those knuckles. Somehow it's less work to do that. So make sure that you attempt that. And that's a very visible thing. You can even put a line on your knuckles and look in a mirror. And the final thing that can help offset that shortness is, are you reaching up from the basement to play your notes, in which case pinky can barely reach? Or are you on the right floor? Are you on the same level as the fingerboard? So I like to sort of use my knuckles as kind of a marker. Knuckles need to be around where the black of the fingerboard begins, give or take. It's different for each hand. Taller people can be a little bit lower and they're still going to have plenty of finger on the fingerboard. Short people have to come up a little bit higher so that their fingers can create a nice arch and drop onto the fingerboard. But if you're down below and you're reaching up, your finger action is going to be slow and pinky is going to be severely disabled. Okay, so there's just some physical things that you can do to offset the reality that our pinky is shorter. And then we just need to overcome the mental reputation that the pinky has for being weak, because it's not a weak finger at all. Okay, now let me give you some exercises to help you to develop a nice pinky vibrato. First, recognize that there's two types of vibrato. Well, there's a lot of types of vibrato, but the two types that we're going to develop with these exercises is a passing or a fast pinky vibrato for notes that are just going by quickly. And I call that a passing or a stinger vibrato. It just stings the note and then you're done. The other type of vibrato is a sustained fat vibrato, where you want it to just sound lush and to sound like any of the other fingers and be able to hold a long note without fear of having a weak sounding vibrato on your pinky. So let me give you a couple of exercises to develop each of those. For the fast passing stinger vibrato, I like to use a rhythm use any rhythm you want, but I go back and forth between finger pairs, and it goes ba-dun, da-dun, da-da-da-da-dum, ba-dun, da-dun, da-da-da-da-dum. And it's just a rhythm that was actually taught to me for another purpose by Alan Lieb in Suzuki teacher training. He calls it the Three Stooges, because I guess that's their theme music. It's a good rhythm, but it's not, the rhythm isn't where the magic is. It's the fact that each finger gets a turn at playing fast and being the passing finger, and each finger gets a turn on being the landing finger. Let me show you. So we'll take 1 and 2. So we're gonna go 1, 2, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. And we land on 2, and then we land on 1, and then we're going to do some fast, and we land on 1 again. But you try to vibrate on every finger, but most especially on the landing fingers, the fingers that have the stop on them. Put some slurs in there, because too much détaché will wreck the effect. I'm not going to tell you a specific bowing to use. Just try to slur those finger marches. Okay? Then switch. Instead of going 1, 2, 2, 1, go 2, 1, 1, 2. Okay, and you do that with each pair of fingers, and it just really develops the fast action vibrato that you need in fast passing notes, where you still want the sparkle of vibrato, but there's barely any time to do vibrato. So let me show you 2 and 3, and I'll try to show you different angles so that you can get the angle that you're most wanting. Okay, so let's start with 2, 3, 3, 2. And it doesn't matter, you can do a whole step between the fingers, half step. You should try to cover all the bases. So here's 2, 3. Now let's show you 3, 2, 2, 3. And finally, the whole reason we're having this discussion is for this finger pair. And so I'm gonna make sure the heel of my hand is nice and close to the neck. I'm going to slant my knuckles up slightly so that my pinky just has to drop onto the fingerboard. And here we go. And then 4, 3, 3, 4. Okay, so that's to develop your stinger or your fast passing vibrato on your pinky. Make sure you're in the right form and then just do that drill. Now, the next vibrato is the sustained fat vibrato that sometimes you're in a passage and a long note lands on the pinky, and you can either change your whole fingering so you don't land on pinky, or you can learn to develop this vibrato so that you don't have to avoid landing on long notes on your pinky. When you use a long note on the pinky, when you're trying to vibrate on your pinky on a long note, I just naturally utilize more arm. And I might even be using more arm even on the passing stinger vibrato. And that's neither here nor there, because there's nothing wrong with using arm. There's nothing wrong with using wrist. I just think I recruit more of my arm to help the pinky for whatever reason. So don't avoid that. Let that be one of the tools in your toolbox. Okay, so for the long, fat pinky note, I'm almost sure that it was Pinchas Zuckerman that I read an interview in Strad magazine. It's been years, but it stuck with me. He said, for long notes, don't try to sit on that bony little fingertip of your pinky. Go ahead and lay down on the fat side of the pad where you'll have all that flesh, just like the other fingers have naturally. So can you see the line on my pinky where let me put it really good so you can see it. I don't want to exaggerate too much, but there. So that's not where you play your fast passing stinger vibrato, and that's not where you normally play notes on the pinky. But if you're on a long note on the G string and you want a fat expressive vibrato, Pinchas Zuckerman said it's okay, and so go ahead and do that. Okay, so that's one tip for the long fat vibrato. The other tip is to go ahead and recruit more of your arm to make a nice fat wider vibrato. Do you see my arm moving? I have a very much of a combination vibrato anyway, so you're going to see my arm moving as well as my wrist, but I just feel like I recruit more arm for my pinky when I'm doing a long note on the pinky. Now, let me give you the exercise that's going to help you to develop this. I just pick any note, but you want a note that you can play with all 4 fingers. So the obvious note is your pinky note, say E on the A string in first position, and you're going to play that note with each of your fingers with the fattest vibrato you can, and you're going to try to make them all sound identical. So start with your best finger. For me, that's second finger. For most people it is. But we're going to find E on the A string. I like to think of it as 2 fairly quick whole notes. So like this, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can park on that note for longer if you want. You can do it for a minute if you want. But then you switch to another finger. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'll go to first finger. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pinky. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, Now we'll go through that exercise without talking so that you'll just know that I'm thinking whole notes in my brain, but I'm listening to the fatness and the roundness of each finger, and I'm trying to make them all sound as good as my best finger. I won't, yeah. Anyway, so here we go. I'll just shut my mouth and show you a few things. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, try that on all 4 strings because each string is slightly different with its finger placement, and it's good for us to cover all the bases. But those are some exercises that can really help you to improve your pinky vibrato, I think. Make sure you leave a comment below if you have more ideas. I'd love to hear them. And let me know if you experience good results from these exercises. Thanks for watching. See you next time.